Hello and welcome to Excel Highway. In today's video I want to share with you a medical staffing and PTO tracker I created in Google Sheets. This file can be used by medical professionals that need to schedule shifts for doctors and clinical staff, and it's a nice way and a very simple way to track who's working where, if there are any people that are out of office, and if there are people that are floating. So you can see here the end result is the schedule. There's a staffing overview that you can see the PTO callouts or the floating. You can build a provider schedule and the staff schedule. You have a visit log, the setup sheet for the drop downs, and the schedule database that does the magic behind the scenes. I will be walking through all the steps on how to build this, so if that is interesting for you, stick around. All right, let's start with the simple things with the setup sheet. Setup sheet is where you are defining your drop downs. So I have my locations, I have my providers, and I defined a default location for each provider, and I already have a drop down which I'll show you if you're not familiar how to create. You just click on data, data validation, and this one is already set up, but you define the range over here. Let's do one from scratch. So data, data validation, add rule, drop down from range, and I'm going to select the range, and I always erase the last digit, so it's just going to take the entire column. You see it already. You can set up colors if you want. I don't usually, and I also don't like the arrow, so the chip, sorry, so I prefer arrow, which doesn't have a color. And that's it, you're done. And if you want to extend, then you just change, let's say from B to B, so that's going to show me everything, and I'm just going to delete that because I don't need it. I'm going to delete that. Done. Great. So that's how you create a drop-down list. So I did that for this table. I also have the nurses or staff list, and I have their default location, and then I have the statuses that I want to be considered for the staffing overview. So where was I? So if the status is working, then it's no. These three are yes, and floating also is no. I'm going to use that in a few seconds, and I'll show you. That's very simple, very basic setup sheet to generate drop-down lists. The visit log, you have your date, which if you double click, then you can select the date, and you can assign this as a date using, again, data validation. Again, I'll show you fresh because that's a bit different. So you can click on data validation, add rule, and here you just select, I select either is validate, but I also like to say date is after, let's say, something like that, and then that, if you double click, that will become a date, and if you click something else, you get the warning. But if you don't want a warning, which I normally don't, I skip that, then you can just say reject the input. Okay, so I will clear the validation. Okay, looks like a bug because I don't have any validation. All right, so I have the date, I have the location, which is a drop down, I have the provider, which is a drop down, and the clinical stuff, which is the drop down from the setup, and just define the number of visits for that specific line. That's the visit log. Pretty simple. Staff schedule, date, location, staff name. The drop down is for the staff name. The status, that's coming from the setup, of course. And I have when the shift started and when the shift ended. And also I have a note section that you can leave notes, and this is where the PTO callout summary is just a simple VLOOKUP based on the status. That's also a very simple table. Provider schedule is exactly the same just for the providers, so different drop down over here, and the same PTO callout summary. Now, granted, I didn't use the start and end shift, but you can use it. You can extend to understand how many hours people worked, and etc. etc. Staffing overview. You can define the dates here, what date range you want to see, and you can see all the people that were part of the PTO call-out summary and or were floating. It's a very simple filter, and this looks like a complicated formula, but it's really not. I have a sort on the VStack on the filter for two different filters. I'm using two different filters because I want to combine the provider schedule and the staff schedule. There are many ways you can do that. You can have another sheet and just, do that over there, which actually may be even easier way to do that. I just wanted to do it quickly. So what I'm doing over here, I'm pulling from the provider or the staff schedule using the filter cases where column A is greater or equal to B1 and less than P2. So that's the range. That's the date range, okay? And I also want column age, which is the callout summary, equals yes. And that will return basically all the rows for the date range that have a yes here. And I'm using VStack because I want to, VStack will combine basically two different ranges. So if you have a VStack on this and another and this, it will just show them together. I can show you range 1, range 2. So it will just vertical stack, so to speak. So it's a very powerful formula. Recommend you get familiar with it. So that is the filter and VStack and the sort, eventually the sort, because I do want this to be sorted by the date. I didn't define what's the sorting column and all that, so that's the first one. But if you want to define a certain column, then you have to define the column number and whether or not it's ascending or descending. But that is the first column, which is the default, so I just used that. And I got this nice table that shows me all the people that were out or on PTOs, or basically the statuses that I defined during these time ranges. The floating staff summary is very similar. Again, I'm using the same trick of filter, VStack, and sort, only in this case I'm looking for a specific status called floating. That's all. So that's going to show me everyone that's floating. That can give you an understanding of do you have a situation where you have to be aware if you have like too many people at the same time that are floaters. That's the staffing overview. Now the schedule, I'll show you that one, and then we'll jump to the schedule database, which is probably the most complicated part of this file. So the schedule sheet will show you basically a weekly schedule that you start over here. So if it's, you take it 1 week back, so I don't have any information, so it's all looking ugh. But anyway, this, you change the date and just have a +1, so it's going to show you a working week. Here, let's see how it's built. So location, the name of the day. I'm assuming, I can also do this, so actually to be really dynamic, so let's actually do that right now. So if you use text and DDD, that's going to return the day of the date. So if I now advance this, then you'll see Tuesday through Saturday and everything shifted. So that's actually a good idea to do that. So what I'm seeing here basically is a schedule for that week, and you can see it. I have the location and then the name of the person and then what is the status for that specific day. So how is that built? It's actually pretty simple. I have this formula, which looks kind of terrifying, but basically it has two different options. Over here I have a helping column that shows me the name of the location, because I have location and then names of people. So what it does, how it works, it searches for this name, and if it doesn't find it, I can use the same formula, actually it's still going to work. So if I don't find the name of the location in the setup, I know that this is actually a person. And if that's the case, just take the value on top of that, because that's going to give me the same clinic, which is what I want, because I'm going to use the name of the clinic for pulling information. So if this is the case, if A equals B, so I know this is a clinic line, I'm going to use sum ifs. Sum ifs on the visit log for a date and a specific clinic. Okay, so I have the clinic and I have the date and I have the number of visits. So if I have more than one person that was logged here, so I will sum that up. That's why you see the numbers here, and for everyone else you just see text, which is the status. So that's this part, sum ifs for column E for two parameters. If this is not equal to A, so that means it's a person, I'm going to use if error VLOOKUP combination of three. The date C2, you don't see right now, with the name of the clinic, which is A4, right? This one, and the name of the person, which is B. Alright, I'm using trim because this has spaces just to indent the text. So I'm going to use trim to remove those spacers. And if I find this value in schedule database, which will next stop, then return that text, otherwise return blank, like in this case when you don't have this person did not work in this date in this hospital, so this is blank. Very simple. That's how you that's how I built this. And color coding, I'm using format, conditional formatting. You can see I had a very simple rule. If the text contains any of the status, for each status it's a different color. Let me show you. So I selected this, conditional formatting, add another rule. I used text contains something and specific color. I don't have something, so that doesn't make any sense, but this is how I built this. So you can use that to easily color code if you want, or just specific statuses like just the floaters or whatever you want. So you can use that. And of course you have this message that tells you that this number is the number of visits. So those are all the let's say more simple sheets. This is how you build them. Now let's look at scheduled database, which is a little bit more complicated. So what scheduled database does is, when we've seen before, I'm using vstack and filter to combine the two data tables, and I only want cases for certain date ranges. So the start date and the end date is based on the schedule, whatever I selected over here. So that always, this impacts the date ranges. So that brings me the filter. Then I have a key, which is those three, as we used before: date, location, and doctor. And this drags to the bottom, of course, but as you work with this, you may need to just drag it even more. So that's not an issue. Let me just freeze here the panes so it's easier for me to look. All right. Then I have a pivot table, which is built on this, which basically gives me what I want, is because I want to see all the people that are scheduled for each medical facility. Easiest way for me was to just create a pivot table. So you highlight the range, insert pivot table, and just select the location, and you flag repeat and the name. So if you don't click repeat, it's just going to show you one name for location, and I actually need all those names because you'll see in a second what I do with this. So this will always update and show me the updated names for those dates. And here is where I build this part, which I didn't show you how I built that. So this is how it builds the actual lines. How does it work? I'm using flatten. Flatten, what it does is basically you can see it takes a range which has the width dimension, and basically pulls it into one column. You see it goes 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1. So you have the clinic, the name, the clinic, the name, the clinic, the name, etc., etc. And this is exactly the output that I wanted. Now I have a column called counter to remove locations, because I don't want to have I don't want it to look like this. I want it to look like this. All right, that's my end result. So I'm just counting how many times I have the name here. Okay, so, and I've used count ifs. Alright, and I've put a dollar sign on L1 just to make it change, go up. So this is the fourth time I see maple, that's why it's a 4. I'm checking if this is a location or not. Okay, if I'm using an if error with match, so it's looking for the value here in setup. A lot of ways to do this, but anyway, if it's a greater than 0, then I'm assigning a no, otherwise blank. So you can see I have it either gives me a no or a number, so I'm interested in the no's. Text space, this is basically some blanks that I created. So if this is equal to no, then add that to the text. That's why you see that the clinic does not have a beginning space and the person does. And lastly, so now what I can do, I can just filter the ones that have 1 next to them. So that's what I did over here. I used filter for on schedule O based on counter and only return the ones that are equal to 1, and that's how you get this nice table. So this is the medical staffing and PTO tracker that will allow you to view your schedule in a nice way, see if you have any issues or floating people, and you can of course take this and take it up a notch with other parameters and information. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit that subscribe and like button, and I will see you next time.